So, hello everyone. Today we will see a topic, the difference between fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. This is a very important topic. Almost every student memorizes the fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy, but very few actually understand them. So that's why UPSC, SSC, and other exams keep repeating this topic. So today we will understand what fundamental rights really mean and what DPSPs actually do, and why one is enforceable and why the other is non enforceable, and how UPSC traps you using this confusion. So, let's begin. So, first of all, let's see what are fundamental rights. So, fundamental rights, let's start simple. You know, like you have memorized all the articles, you may be knowing, okay, these are the fundamental rights. So, let's make it very simple. I am a citizen, right? And I am living in this country, India. So the country has given some rights to its citizens, some basic rights, like to protect your freedom, equality, dignity. So those are called as the fundamental rights. The fundamental means what? Basic. So the fundamental rights. Okay. So, and you know, obviously, all the rights: right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, and then right to religion, cultural and educational rights, the right to constitutional liberties, everything. So, now, so here is the most important line. If a fundamental right is violated, you can directly go to the court. So, I will tell you a very simple example. Suppose the government says, you are not allowed to speak against us. Okay? The government is saying you are not allowed to speak against us to its citizens. So you can immediately approach the High Court or the Supreme Court. That's why fundamental rights are called enforceable rights. Like, you know, if your rights are violated, you are going to the court. So that is why they are called as enforceable rights. Okay? I think that is well and clear till now. So, the second thing we will see, what are directive principles of state policy? Okay? So now let's talk about DPSPs, Directive Principles of State Policy. So DPSPs, Directive Principles. So they are some principles of state policy, right? So these are the instructions to the government and not rights for citizens. Got it? These are the instructions to the government. Okay, so they are telling the government like reduce inequality, provide livelihood, promote education, ensure public health, protect environment. So these are some of the instructions to the government, and it is not right for the citizens. So, but here is the difference. You cannot go to the court if a DPSP is not implemented. Okay, the simplest example is the constitution states, the constitution is saying, suppose the state should provide adequate means of livelihood to all, and suppose the government is failing to do this, and you cannot file a case saying my livelihood is not guaranteed, punish the government. You can't do it because DPSPs are not enforceable. You can't go to the court and complain against the government for this. So it is that simple as that, as simple as that. Okay, then part 3, the core difference and why this difference exists. Okay, and this is a logical question that every aspirant should ask. If directive principles are so important, why they are not enforceable? Okay, this question comes into the mind of every student, who thinks rationally. So the answer is because India was poor at independence, and if DPSPs were enforceable, imagine the situation. People will go to the court, whatever things are not done. Like courts would be flooded with cases. Government would collapse financially, and judiciary would start running the country. So the constitution makers were practical. Okay, so they said give citizens immediate rights and give the state long term goals. And this is how it was done. Then we will go to part 4, the real life comparison. So this is the best way to remember. Okay, so think of it like this. So fundamental rights is like the salary you can demand. Okay, fundamental rights is like the salary you can demand it legally, while DPSPs are like company's vision and we aim to become the best employer, something like that. Okay, I think you got it. And you can't sue the company tomorrow if that vision is not fulfilled. Suppose the company's vision is like we aim to become the best employer, and you can't sue the company tomorrow if that vision is not fulfilled. But the vision still guides decisions. So this is a real life example for you to make the concept more clearer. So, and rights are demanded and principles are desired. Okay, let's keep this in mind. Then the next part is about UPSC exam traps. So here you can see the part 3 articles 12 to 35 and part 4 article 36 to 51. Part 3 articles 12 to 35 and part 4 36 to 51. So remember, and you should have to memorize the articles with like this article is this one. So that is asked in multiple examinations. So remember this. Then the examiner's trap. So this is what something interesting. Okay, UPSC often frames statements like DPSPs are legally enforceable by courts. It allows to confuse the candidates with this statement. Okay, and another is like citizens can directly approach court for directive principles of state policy. So these two statements are wrong, right? And but here is the twist. Courts can use directive principles of state policy to interpret the laws, right? And courts can harmonize fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. So example, right to life today includes right to clean environment, right to livelihood. So these ideas came from DPSPs. So part 6 is the quick questions for viewers. Okay, so let's test your understanding. So first question, write it in the comment box. The answer question number 1 is, can you approach court if minimum wages are not implemented? Minimum wages are not implemented, then can you approach the court? Answer is no, because it's a directive principles of state policy, right? And second question, can you approach court if free speech is restricted? Think about it. Free speech, freedom of speech, that is a fundamental right. Yes. And if it is restricted, yes, of course, you can go to the court. Yeah. And next question, can DPSPs influence laws? Okay, we have already told courts can use it to interpret their judgments as well as laws. So yes, it can influence laws. And are DPSPs inferior to fundamental rights? What do you think? Give in the comment box. So to sum up, fundamental rights protect the individual, and where DPSPs guides the state. One is enforceable, the other is aspirational. So together they form the soul of the constitution. So if you understand this logic, you will never confuse fundamental right and DPSPs again in exams or interviews. So exam takeaway is all. The takeaways are like, fundamental rights are justiciable and DPSPs are non-justiciable. Courts interpretation and not enforcement. And UPSC tests logic, not memory. And you have to save this question, because this concept has to be, because the question repeats in some form every exam cycle, and so on. Don't be the one donating marks. So that's it. Thank you.